So, my guest today is Jeanie Chang. Jeanie is a global mental health keynote speaker and clinician. She's also an executive coach and a DEIB consultant. And here's the best part, she is the mother of four. So, somehow she built this amazing career while raising a family. What she's doing now is very unique, very specific. I'm going to let her tell you all about it. Jeanie, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Amanda. So glad to be here.
So I know you're super busy. You're speaking all over the world. You're actually heading back to Korea soon after we do this interview. So thank you for making time for me. We met in our neighborhood in Cary, North Carolina, outside of Raleigh, many years ago because we were both parents of. You had a couple of kids on the swim team, right?
That's how we met. I remember.
Yeah, swim team parents and volunteering and all that. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, at that time you were a stay-at-home mom, right?
I was a stay-at-home mom going through graduate school.
Okay, so you were starting to kind of transform your life.
Yeah.
Let's go back and talk about, your original career because you were a journalist
Yeah.
and your education and kind of how you progressed to where you are now.
Yeah, and that's actually part of my story because it's true. These days now, we can reinvent ourselves. That's really important to share. And I felt like I did that a little later in life. But then now I think back going, oh my gosh, early 30s was not late in life. So I started my career as a journalist in DC, covering news to street news to politics, even President Clinton, at WTOP Radio, that's the CBS news station. And then I transitioned over to AP broadcast. I loved it. But part of the story is I left the field purposely and intentionally, experiencing something that didn't feel good. And that word that everybody knows now is burnout. But back in the 90s, no one knew that word. And I was only in my mid-20s, but I still experienced burnout. I was doing a lot. I was isolating myself to do the best and be the best, moving up and broadcasting. And I just remember feeling lonely. And I thought, you know what? I like the field, but I don't want to have this kind of life. It was just for me. I decided to make that decision. So I left and decided to go to business school. So in between all this, I went to business school in DC for all the wrong reasons, meaning I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, you know what? Let me get an advanced degree and look good. It was all about that image I wanted to portray, but I did. And I finished business school, but I'm actually proud I did because I use it now. So I went back to school as when you met me, I was in graduate school for a clinical degree, marriage and family therapy. So completely different. But raising four young kids, decided to follow my calling. So when I was, I don't know, after I had my fourth kid, I was like, you know what? I'm too young to do what I'm doing in marketing. I didn't enjoy it. We had moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, that just very recently. And I was like, you know what? If I have to go back to school, I'll do it. That's what I did. I started from scratch, went into psychology, something I never thought I would do. Yeah. And
I mean, you talk about all the education that you had to go through to get to this point, I mean, that's a lot of sacrifice and hard when you have young children. I mean, how old were you when you went back to school for the counseling degree?
Yeah. So see, it's kind of,
I mean, how old were the kids and how old were the kids?
I do remember the kids' age. Isn't that funny? I remember the kids' age. So
yeah.
A baby. So my fourth child, I have had my fourth child baby. Then the other one was, okay. So maybe 1, 4, 6, and 8. So four kids very close together. Now looking back, women are able to do anything. Let me just put it that way. So I multitask. I was very tired, sleep deprived, raising four kids, then going to swim team practices at night. But I actually would go back and do that again because being a little older back then in graduate school, can you believe that? In my early 30s, I was on the older end. And I remember people, the younger folks going, oh, you're a mom. I was one of the few moms in graduate school, which looks very different today, I think. But I remember using my life experience to be the therapist that I was back then. And that really helped my career, actually, because I had some experience with families being a parent myself. So it actually made me understand the family dynamics when I was doing a lot of family therapy. So I always say being a mom had its advantages when I started my career. And then fast forward, now being a corporate speaker, that would be like 80% of my work. And that came by happenstance, where pre-pandemic, Cisco, which is in our backyard, someone from Cisco reached out to me. It was a friend of a friend, and he was like, "Hey, I heard that you're a licensed therapist. We need somebody in mental health, and we want somebody who feels comfortable speaking to our employee base about mental health in the workplace. And whatever you want to bring up, that'd be great." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "So you just need me to put together a PowerPoint?" And he's like, "Yeah, workshop for 60 minutes, and make sure that just so you know, it's going to be streamed live to all our offices in San Francisco, China, and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Sure." So I did it. I prepped it. I think I had about a month to prep, and then presented live in the headquarters in North Carolina. And then it streamed everywhere. But that's when something else clicked. I went, wait a second. I'm actually good at this. Meaning I felt comfortable
Right.
speaking on psychology or mental health, a topic that I became an expert in, and then engaging with people. And that's how that part of my career clicked. So when people ask, how'd you get into speaking? It just came naturally and then literally became word of mouth. And so now today, I would say I'm in a lot of corporations speaking on workplace mental health and advocating to talk about it more, especially with burnout and stress on the rise.
And I know when you and I did the most recent stories, it was, I think, during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it was at the time there was a series of attacks on members of the Asian community. We had some here in our area. Obviously, there were several throughout the country that we were looking at. And so that kind of became a niche for you, right? Talking about that kind of hate and how it pushes people to do, horrible things sometimes, and also the mental health component of that.
Yeah, actually it did because I also specialize in grief and trauma. So trauma was rampant in the midst of the pandemic and not just in the Asian community, everywhere with so much stuff happening, tragedies all over the world. So it was very timely. And that's actually another reason why my other company, which we'll talk about, Nunez Nunchi, catapulted and became a business because that I was talking a lot about K dramas and mental health, which I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But that I brought in Korean dramas, honestly, into my work, not just for the Asian community. I wanted to talk about mental health in a different way. It's already depressing talking about being depressed and stressed and burned out. But I thought, you know what? How could I make it a little bit more fun, but also normalize the conversation? And that's when I brought in stories that are not ours, but stories that we see on Netflix and Amazon or wherever we're watching them, and helping people relate to those stories that are really about life and things that are difficult, but things that are joyful. And that's how that came into my work. But yeah, that a lot of
Yeah,
yeah,
you brought up the K dramas. So let's talk about that. You are using this to promote positive mental health. Okay, what is a K drama? And then explain to me, how you use that as your vehicle.
sure. And K drama is simply put Korean dramas. That's the short term K dramas are Korean language television shows. So not soap operas. I'm very clear on that. Soap operas, I would say, in some sense, are different because K dramas actually are episodic, where every K drama is like 16 episodes in one season. They're not continuing long running. So that's another good thing about Korean dramas. They're short lived. You watch them and then you move on to something else. But again, Korean language television, and they're streamed everywhere now. And so I brought them into my work. I would say early on in the pandemic, when everybody from old to young, young to old, students everywhere in workplace were just having a hard time, and they're in global lockdown. We're in a global lockdown. What else there's there to do but stream and watch things on Netflix? So thank goodness for these platforms where we could watch things to cheer us up. And I remember thinking, I'm watching K dramas. So again, I was watching them. I enjoyed them. They've been a part of my life. They're part of my self care. So I thought, I wonder if they can help others, because I don't think I'm that unique. I think they can help other people. So
Hmm.
I started bringing it into my Zoom support groups and having, hey guys, I have a clip here showing somebody dealing with some trauma. Let's talk about it because you guys are talking about the same thing. So it became something relatable. And then it really blew up after Squid Game. If everybody knows Squid Game, which you guys do, that is a Korean drama. That's a Korean language TV show. It's not necessarily the typical K drama because it was made exclusively for Netflix. So the rating's a little different, meaning it's a little more graphic. But generally, K dramas are PG rated. You could watch it. You could watch it with your kids. It's very family oriented, like a Disney or Hallmark movie. So that's the best way to explain it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Squid Game really catapulted the K dramas on a global scale, and now they're a lot part of my work.
So tell me about you. You have a company using the K dramas as a mental health tool, and then you also wrote a book on this. So talk about both of those things.
Yeah, Nuna's Nunchi. So Nuna, they're Korean words, and Nuna means older sister. So trying to be fun and cute. Nunchi is the Korean concept of social and emotional intelligence, basically reading the room, kind of gauging what people are feeling. We all do this, that we actually use our Nunchi. It's just that's what it's called in Korean. So I knew that I wanted to name my platform that older sister that uses her social emotional intelligence, if that makes sense. I use Nunchi in my work as a therapist. And so that's what I named the platform, but it started out social media. So I don't mind sharing. I'm 50 years old, Gen Xer, proud Gen Xer, had no idea about social media. We didn't really know about social media until our 30s. So I'm not accustomed to Instagram and YouTube and all this stuff. However, I knew when I was talking about these K dramas and my content, young folks especially were like, Jeanie, put this on YouTube, put this on Instagram. I'm like, okay, I have to create an Instagram. I have to create a YouTube.
Right, right.
Create one. And I'm like, you know what? Okay. So I decided to, because I had all this good content I wanted to share and put somewhere. And then Nuna's Nunchi just kind of took off the Instagram, and the YouTube is slow, but it's definitely taking off on the Instagram, where I do these reels and I talk about K dramas and mental health. And that is how the book came about. Never underestimate the power of social media, because the publisher, Wiley Publishing, heard about me through social media. And so I think,
Wow.
yeah, an editor shared, some editor saw me on social media, shared it to their editor. Then it became like this thing. And then they were watching me on social media before they approached me. So I think that's really important to talk about, that I said, hey, social media presence, how little or small, because at the time mine wasn't huge, but it still made an impact, that I got this book deal called How K Dramas Can Transform Your Life. And so I think I always have to share that, because I have to say it came from my social media presence. So the book was published just in May. Yeah.
Wow, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
incredible.
Thank you.
So you are new to the 50 plus club. You're just 50, so you just squeaked in under the wire.
Yeah.
And we were talking a little before we started the interview. This is a time when a lot of women are trying to figure stuff out. They may be at the tail end of a long career, or a job that they're leaving. They may be going through a divorce. They may have lost a spouse. They may have health issues. There's so much, that so many layers, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times women feel like they don't have options. They don't have another chapter.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't even feel like they're relevant or they're being seen. What kind of advice? I mean, you've obviously managed to create this new career in your life. What kind of advice would you give to women who are struggling to do the same thing?
And I'll go back to how I started, honestly. Did you know that I never imagined I'd be here? Even though I knew that I'm going to go back to graduate school to study something, in psychology, I still didn't see this. So how I really would suggest someone begins is thinking and asking these questions of, what am I good at? Like, what do I enjoy? After doing 20 or 30 years in corporate America, that could have happened. They might have forgotten their passion. Not to say their job wasn't
Hmm.
their passion, but we get stuck on a job, right? And we're trying to make ends meet. We're getting to the point of asking those very important existential questions. What am I good at? What have I been so passionate about in the past, present, and even now or future, that keeps me going? Even what are my hobbies? And I ask this because, do you know that me watching K dramas was my self care and hobby? But somehow I turned it into a business, because it became a business because I was getting demands for me speaking on K dramas and mental health. So I would say you have to start authentically, meaning, what do you want to do? You may be 50, don't think so much about finances. If you can kind of get that out, even if you're stressed about it, still go, wait a second, wait a second. My passion, what are they? I haven't had a thought. I haven't, some people say I haven't thought about my passion in 30 years. I'm like, this is your time to do it. And then think
Yeah.
about what you're good at, though, because some of our passions and what we're good at are different. And so it's really important to think about what makes you shine, where you feel confident as a woman or as a leader, as whatever you're doing. That's going to impact your mental health, first of all, in a good way. And then I really believe if you delve deep into that, you can find something. And I guess money would be, this sounds so cliche, icing on the cake, really. Of course, it's
Right.
money out of your passion and whatever. But really, it's got to start with you enjoying something. And 50, even though it sounds young and I feel younger than ever, I think it's important that at 50 and up, we make very intentional choices. life is too short these days. The biggest regret that I see from folks is they didn't spend enough time doing what they wanted to do or spending time with people that they enjoy and love. That's really very important part of life. It's very crucial to your well-being. So if you want to live longer, then delve deep into what makes you happy. That's my bottom line. And we don't think about that enough, really.
No, I agree with you. And I think what you said too is really important about aligning your skill set with what you're passionate about. So, maybe look at these three things I'm passionate about, but this one I'm pretty good at. This one this
Yeah.
one not so good. So maybe I should go for the one that I like, but also I do well at.
Yeah. But and then it
Um,
comes out authentically. Then all of a sudden you can give your all to it because you enjoy it and you feel good about it.
right.
I think that's very important. Again, that ties directly into your well-being and directly into your identity. Yeah.
And why do you think it is? I mean, as a therapist, I'm sure you talk to a lot of women. Why do you think it is that women, for whatever reason, struggle more with these transformations than men do? I mean, it just feels like we're given different messages, maybe culturally.
Culturally still we're in 2024 and I still feel like we're faced with a cultural thing of like, oh, make sure your home is intact, like family matters, and I'm thinking that's so interesting. We're in 2024 but we still get that message somewhere somehow. We're
Hmm.
still fighting stereotypes, and then
Yeah.
fighting stereotypes and all this imaging out there, we have to live up to it, meaning, oh my goodness, people already think that we're emotional, so I can't show emotion, right? And I'm like, first of all, we're normal, so we're going to show emotion. And I think that's what women do best. So I'll say that, but I go, of course, there's professionalism and all the things that we need to do. But overall, I think the stereotypes that are out there are still very much real. In fact, I feel like we made 5 steps forward and 10 steps back, somewhere, somehow, where it's still seen in movies and in television. Here's one thing about K dramas that I'll bring. K dramas are mostly written by women. So guess what you see in
Oh.
you see empowered women. You'll see a woman CEO taking over companies. You'll see women in these strong roles, and you'll see men beautifully done in the same strong roles, but they're more gentle and emotional. And again, written by women. So compared to, I guess, Western writing now, where it's focused on the male gaze, K dramas focus on the female gaze. And so that is another reason why they're just being eaten up globally, because it's different. And that's so important to see those portrayals to encourage us. So I also recommend for women, they want encouragement, check out a K drama and you'll see an empowered woman and see what she's going through and really feel encouraged by that portrayal.
That's some great advice. So you want to grow your company. I know that.
Yeah.
But what is on your bucket list, Jeannie?
You know what's on my bucket list, and it's a big bucket list. Korea, South Korea is where I expanded my company into because I'm doing these tours. No one would ever expect I'm doing these tours, but they're wellness tours and they relate to my Nuna's Nunchi brand. But what I would love, honestly, unlike the US, which I think the US does really well, which is mental health resources and programs, we have them in place. Korea does not. So I would love, honestly, to actually build from the ground up or somehow have my name attached to South Korea's mental health system. It's a big dream, but I feel like I'm giving back to my home country, but bringing back the learning I had here in the US, which is so important to me, and bring that to South Korea and then kind of combine both my identities, Korean and American. So it's a big dream, but South Korea could use some help in building their mental health infrastructure that we have here in the US pretty well. It can always be improved, especially in the workplace, but South Korea doesn't really have it.
Do
So
you still have family there?
yeah,
And
I have lots of ties there. My entire father's side is still there. My mother's side mainly in the U.S., but then lots of cousins and now friends and there are many global people living in Seoul, especially now. So I see them a lot, and I'm like, you know what? I know I can do something to bring my Western learning to Eastern to an Eastern country.
yeah,
Right.
were you born here in the US?
No, I was born in Korea. I was born in Seoul, but raised here.
I
So
gotcha.
Korean American cultural identity that I've become proud of. I say that because growing up it was hard, not a lot of Koreans, but now it's so diverse. I feel like I can give back to my country in the position I am as a woman CEO. By the way, in Korea, they're still very traditional. So sometimes they'll be like thinking my husband's the CEO. Let me tell you that. It's so funny when Korean and they're speaking to him and he'll be like, no, 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 my wife's the CEO. I'm like, yes, thank you, honey. Right.
That's
So
great.
very clear about doing that. And then they do direct their questioning to me. But I also have to prove myself in Korea. But that's my hope to change that country. Yeah.
So how can people follow you and keep up with what you're doing?
Sure. Well, I'm on Instagram as Nunes Nunchi. They can find me there. And on LinkedIn, Jeanie Chang. That's still, I go by Jeanie Chang as in professionally, but Nunes Nunchi is my, I would say, alter ego. And then they can find me on YouTube as well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Jeannie. I'm so proud of you. Watching all that you've done is so amazing, and just I'm rooting for you and your future. And I know that it sounds like you're off to an incredible start with what you're doing. So,
Thank you so much.
congratulations, and thank you
Great
for
to see you.
taking the time. Safe travels, and I will include all of your social and your links for our listeners so they can follow you and check out the K dramas.
Thanks, Amanda.
Okay, have a great day.
Thank you.